Hey guys, it's Spoot from Fort Misery Gaming. We're actually doing a little bit of a thing we don't normally do. So, War of the Visions in Japan just announced the Final Fantasy IV collaboration, which I am super psyched for. It's my first Final Fantasy, so like the first one that I was like actively engaged with, because I played the original one on the NES, but it not the same. You know, this one was the first one with like a really cohesive story and like different characters, not just generic, you know, classes, which I'm also cool with, but like this was it. So Cecil is one of the 3 URs that is coming out with it, and we were going to talk about him just briefly and a little bit of the quality of life updates, although I'm not going to go too deep on that because talking about quality of life updates in global, I may as well go jump off of a building. But we'll see what happens. So, Rosa and Kain are the other 2 URs that are coming out. Rosa is a healer, obviously. Kain is a Dark Dragoon. We don't really know anything about their stats yet. They haven't been released. But Cecil has been out for about 3 days now. So we'll take a look at his stuff. A lot of people are like, oh, hey, it's another light character. Is he going to be a tank? Do we skip Warrior of Light? Which is kind of the reason we're talking about it today. This is a little bit of future-proofing for you guys, so you know what the character does, and you can make sort of an informed decision on like, am I chasing Cecil and skipping Warrior of Light? So, the answer to that up front is no. You don't have to chase Cecil. He's not as good as a tank. Just to preface, he's mostly sort of a Ramza adjacent unit. He's got these barriers that are really cool that don't have fall-off timers on them. So, like, you know, when you haste somebody, it goes for 2 or 3 turns. He's got stuff that lasts just period. So you can he can crank them out at the beginning of the fight, and then they just keep going, which is kind of crazy. I don't know the depth of how useful they are. You have people that are still sort of gaming his equipment and trying to get him to 99 to figure out how he works at the very highest level. So it's still too soon to see like where he falls in, but Ultima has him in the 9 rankings, just flat. So he's still a very good unit, but he's not like an uber Warrior of Light tank replacement, mostly because he doesn't generate hate with anything outside of you can equip Vow of Love on him. So we'll go over his abilities and his stats and just make sure so you know what you're sort of looking at. So you've got his remake look, although this is technically how he always looked in the Amano art, but it's still, man, it's such a cool looking thing. Dude looks awesome. So he's got 3 move, 1 jump, standard for pretty much 90% of the roster. He's got a job you don't know. It's Paladin of the Moon, because in the game he's from the moon, and the moon's haunted by a ghost. Yeah. So if you haven't played Final Fantasy IV, you get to look forward to that in the back half. Also, the raid is Golbez, his brother, so like that's really, really cool. So he's got sub-job Soldier and Monk. Nothing, I'm trying to think. So Monk is pretty standard. I think the only other soldier we've seen outside of like a couple of SRs is Stern, so you kind of know what to expect there, I believe, for the most part. He is heavy equipment, armor, helm, accessory. His TMR is something that I don't know. It's an accessory. You get 362 HP, 42 attack, 6 defense, and his critical rate goes up by 12. Pretty good. Like, that's a decent TMR. Critical rate being in double digits is impressive. But he also has an activatable, so for 36 TP, at start level, you increase attack and mag by 20% and bravery by 4, and this maxes out at 30, 30, and 10. Also pretty good. That is a reasonably well-polished TMR. Like, that would pretty much be worth running him down. You also have his master ability. I don't know if that's good. Like, most of the time, master abilities, you hope for flat stats or something to sort of lean the character in a particular direction. This is just increased light attack 15, which is fine, I guess. It means he's really gonna hurt dark units, but I don't necessarily think it's as useful as maybe more defense or maybe some speed. Like a regular... Well, I mean, we'll just go into his stats. So his no equipment maxed out stats, he's got 1251 HP. Compared to Engelbert, he's got 1466, I believe. So 100 and 200 difference-ish. Warrior of Light has... We can actually go look at Warrior of Light real quick. Where are you? What's your default HP? I am now curious. 1342, so not too bad. So, and then where was Engel? I just saw him. And then I let him go. I am blind. There he is. Good God. So, Engel and Warrior of Light definitely have more HP, but Warrior of Light just has better abilities in the long run. Okay, where is Cecil? There we go. All right, back to his stats. 91 TP, 86 AP. It's fine. There's not, like, he's pretty standard. 144 attacks, actually kind of good. He's a little higher. Agi's 36, pretty decent. Doesn't really go up too much. 94 dex and 88 luck. So it's not the worst. I think he's pretty good. And those are just the levels. So, like, with stats, he gets... Oh, shit, 75 more luck. That's a lot. And critical rate 30. That's pretty good. So you're essentially building him like a crit stick. Let's see. Job stats. You get 1,500 for HP, 29 TP. So almost just shy of 3,000 total, just with jobs and his level stats. So that's not the worst. Little extra luck, little extra agility. This is pretty good. Like, he ends up being a pretty well-rounded character. He has no natural resistances to elements other than his 10% minus to dark. He gets hit by piercing, minus 10%, and magic, no, minus 10%, but his slashing resist is pretty high. 20% is pretty good. And then, oh wait, no, that's projectile now. This is piercing. Piercing has got the spear, projectile has the bullet. 15% to piercing, which is actually kind of rare for tank-ish units. Most of them tend to be not good against tanks. He also has 50% resist to paralysis, 50% resist to charm, and a 10% resist to stop, which is... that's fine. Like I said, I've said this on multiple occasions, anything that's down here that's 10 or above is pretty much pure cake. Let's look at his skills. So he's got 4 main support abilities. He's got 1 for Paladin of the Moon, and 2 for Monk, and 1 for Soldier. So his Paladin of the Moon is kind of close to the Paladin ones. Like, you get more defense, you get more HP at a percentage, that's fine. Monks are, you get more attack flat, and then you get an HP percentage. I think possibly his Soldier one might be pretty good, depending on if you're making him a full DPS or sort of a support DPS, because it makes his resistances lower, but that 60% attack makes him hit like a truck. He's got 3 counters, chance to counter physical damage, and reduce damage taken. That's pretty paladin-y. Soldier, chance to counter physical damage, more damage. So I guess it depends on how defensive you want him to be. Like, counters proc fine, but, you know, it's not all the time. So it kind of really depends on where you want this guy's kit to be specifically. Let's see. Main job. This is where the bread and butter is. So these are the skills you get, period. They are all slashing. They are all physical. So he is not a hybrid caster. So you've got first move, 95 to 120% damage, increased agility, 10 to 25 for 1 turn. So it kind of can get him in. It's 12 AP. It's pretty cheap. you get 165, or 130 to 165 on a second ability, 25% chance to inflict disable. That's pretty good. This is kind of where some of the stuff kind of goes crazy, like these last two, or well, two of the middle ones. So you increase your defense 5 to 12 for 3 turns, and your spirit debuff resistance. That doesn't mean much, that last one, but getting 12 free spirit and defense for AP, or for TP, is pretty good. This one's kind of crazy. And I think this is kind of close to a couple of the other sack defenses. So you consume a quarter of your HP and you reduce damage either 30% or 50% for 3 instances of damage. You'll survive most hits that way unless you are absolutely going to get one shot. And with over 3k health, without equipment, or with right at 3k health without equipment, I can't really think of too many ways you're going to get one shot. Like, there's enough resistance and enough HP there that it's probably going to keep you alive very well. You've got 165 to 200% damage, but you decrease attack for 23 turns. 23 turns, for 3 turns, excuse me. 20 to 39. I don't know, does that mean it doesn't inflict it? So that may reduce... now I'm curious. What does the night job class read? I gotta find night. A knit. I wanna see what the breaks mean. Oh no! Yeah, so that is a decreased attack on them. So that move's nuts. So you get up to 200% damage, which is a pretty good modifier, and then it's 39% attack for 3 turns. So it turns any major melee DPS you can get to into a kitten, and if you ever hit a gunner with that, they kind of just turn to poopy. All right, we've got the other Soldier of the Moon, or Paladin of the Moon abilities. You've got Restore HP, 20% for 3 turns. Kind of a regen. That's not bad. You've got a flat 165% damage and increases Reaper Killer. That's a pretty good 4-hit if in a straight line. It's not the worst. And then you've got, this is another one of the wins that's kind of weird. So he consumes his own HP, 25%. That's the standard number. It cuts it. And then you, again, reduce damage for 50%. Is this the same ability as Up? Yeah, okay. I was like, that doesn't happen twice. That's just the one you get when you sub-job it. Okay. These are all pretty standard. So these are all like the hazard breaks and all of these for Soldier. If you've played Stern, you've seen a lot of these. Pretty good for supplemental DPS. Like, if you're trying to run this guy as a more DPS version of Ramza, he's probably going to be pretty good at it. Monk abilities are fine. I don't see too many people running out. His limit burst is kind of nuts. So 200% is a decent modifier, but it's almost a 70% chance to stun. So if you want to get in on somebody and just make sure they don't survive the next turn, that's nuts. That's pretty good. Skill tree is in Japan, obviously. It's, you know, it is what it is. Critical rate is actually... Good God, he's got a lot of those. So mostly on the left side. Man, that's a lot of crit. So that's kind of the short version of Cecil for you. So to give you an idea, he is not necessarily a tank. He is a very tanky support DPS a la Ramza. He's a little harder to kill, and his moves generally sacrifice some of that HP to make someone last longer. Particularly, like a 50% damage reduction is going to keep him in the fight for a long time for 3 hits. He is less supporty than Ramza. Like, his TMR is pretty good, but he doesn't really have anything outside the shield that's going to hit, like, everybody. So but he does a little bit more damage. I think his modifiers are either slightly the same, or either the same or slightly higher. His limit burst is nuts. That's crazy. It doesn't have like a guaranteed hit or anything, but 70%, 67% chance for stun is kind of nuts. So here's the digest. So everybody was kind of panicking, like, oh, do we skip Warrior Light? Because Final Fantasy IV is 5-ish months down the road. The answer is no. You don't skip Warrior of Light. If you were going to chase him at this point, keep doing it. Cecil is not the tank replacement we were thinking he was going to be. He doesn't have any natural hate-generating moves, and if you put Vow of Love on him, he only gets, like, what, 2 or 3 turns before he gets out DPS'd or just run down. So don't worry so much about that. He is a very good unit. I think once the stats come out for Kain and Rosa, we'll probably know a little better about those. But they look pretty good. Like Final Fantasy IV is 4 and 6 are my absolute favorites outside of tactics. So like the idea that they would jump to 4 is really, really happy making for me. So a little tiny update on the quality of life, and this could change, and it may not come to global for a very long time, but you guys need to know at least a little bit. So during this event, you get guaranteed blocks of shards in every shop for the banner unit. So Cecil has 3 shards every shop reset. So at bare minimum, it means that you are going to have significant, and it's not like, okay, I said guaranteed, let me walk that back. It's not always guaranteed, but there's a slot for it, so it's a higher chance. But it's only 3 shards. So your chances of actually LB4ing them bare minimum is significantly higher in less shop resets than it was before. So like when we got Sid or Fravia, for example, recently, like Sid and Ramza and Fravia, a lot of you, and me included, like I ran down probably 3,000 or 4,000 gems in the shop to make sure I could get all of Sid's shards before the last day, because it took me that long to get them. So having at least a smaller number of shards and a higher density would have helped me out immensely. I would probably have spent significantly less getting him max LB'd. So keep that in mind. It is something coming out. There is also a celebration coming out with it, but that's 5 months down the road. Global could change it entirely. I'm not speaking to that, so don't. I don't play JP, so that's not my territory. If you want to check out like Tana or Cabbage at AOJ, go check them out. They are much better sources of information for the Japanese. The only reason I was even dipping my toes into this one was to be like, all right, everybody knows Cecil's coming out. What does that mean? So don't worry about replacing Warrior of Light with Cecil. It's not going to happen. He's a good defensive DPS unit, but he is not a good tank. He's also a pretty big dart killer, which is kind of crazy. So I don't know how well he'd stack up against Mad Armor Stern, but it's pretty good so far. So that is it for me. Like, comment, subscribe. Tell me how psyched you are for a Final Fantasy IV collab, because I am crazy hyped for it. Like, I love Final Fantasy IV, and I'm actually really excited to see what they do with Kain and Rosa, because love those guys. Like, some of my favorite Final Fantasy characters ever. So that's it from Spoot. You guys have a good one, and don't get miserable.